What is up? Welcome back to All Things Theology. We're looking at the last 3 verses of Philippians here, and the thing that I think is so cool about these last verses is that Paul is basically saying, the Christians here say hi, and especially the Christians who live in Caesar's palace. And you're like, whoa, he just so casually drops that in, but it's like, actually, that is really significant and just says a lot about the power of the gospel. So let's talk about that. Now, Caesar was the person who essentially ran the Roman Empire, and the Caesar at that time was a guy called Emperor Nero. And Emperor Nero is like the ultimate bad guy of church history. He was a really awful, evil person. Like, he killed his mom, he killed his wife, and then he just started killing loads of Christians. Nero had Christians burned alive, and he was the one who kept Paul in prison for 2 years before chopping his head off. Pretty bad guy. A lot of early Christians kind of identify him as the first guy to severely persecute the church. And yet what Paul is saying here is the people who lived in his palace had become Christians themselves. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean family members, but slaves, servants, guards, people who possibly had influence, maybe even family members in the house, had come to believe in Jesus. And I think it's amazing to think about how the gospel had almost infiltrated the hub of the most powerful empire and organization in the world at that time. And that the people in there believed in Jesus, even though the ruler was really horrible to people who did believe in Jesus. And I guess it's just a really great image and a class way to finish Philippians of just dropping in how the light of the gospel can just infiltrate any dark place. And it makes me think of something Jesus says in Matthew 16:18, where he says, "I will build my church, and the gates of hell shall not prevail against it." And what we often do with this verse, I think we often misunderstand this, because certainly in my experience, and what I used to think of this verse, was that the church, Jesus is saying that the church is like this city on a hill. He does say that elsewhere, but it's like the church is this city, and the powers of hell and Satan and evil forces are trying to lay siege against it and trying to overtake the church, but the church is going to stand strong and it's going to resist this evil power and it's going to remain. That is what I thought this verse meant, but actually there's one word in this verse that totally undermines that interpretation, and the word is gates. You see, gates are not an offensive weapon. If you want to attack someone, you don't attack them with gates, because what gates do is they keep people in and they keep people out. And so instead of it being the church who is this city who is standing against the powers of evil, it's actually hell that is the city, and they're cowering in fear, afraid of the light and the truth of the gospel. And Jesus is saying that the gates of hell are not going to prevail against the church. That we, with the power of the gospel and the power of the Holy Spirit, we're going to smash in there and we're going to shine light and bring hope and restoration and God's truth into the darkest places. And I think this is a crystal clear example of that happening. That in a really dark place, the palace of Emperor Nero, the first persecutor of Christians, there are Christians living there. I feel like that is a really great way to end Philippians, and actually just a great way to end this series. A reminder of the power of the gospel, the truth of the stuff that we've been talking about in the last 38 videos. I hope that you've learned a lot from it. I feel like I know Philippians backwards. Like, I just know so much about it now, which is great. And I hope that you're in the same position as that. But thank you for being here. Really appreciate that. And I will see you soon. God bless.